On January 15, 2009, at 3:31 in the afternoon, a man named Chesley Sullenberger III sat in the left seat of an Airbus A320 and made a decision that took 11 seconds. The decision saved 155 lives. What nobody told you is what those 11 seconds actually cost him. US Airways Flight 1549 departs LaGuardia Airport at 3:25 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon in January. The Airbus is an Airbus A320, registration N106US, a narrow-body commercial jet carrying 155 passengers and 5 crew members on a scheduled service to Charlotte Douglas International Airport in North Carolina. The flight is unremarkable in every way: a routine sector, a crew that has done this hundreds of times. A gray winter afternoon over New York City, the Hudson River a dark ribbon running between the towers of Manhattan and the low industrial sprawl of New Jersey. At 3:27 p.m., at an altitude of 2,800 feet, the aircraft flies through a flock of Canada geese. The birds enter both engines simultaneously. The left engine fails first, its turbine blades shredding against the impact of multiple large birds, the engine surging and then going silent. The right engine follows seconds later, its thrust decaying to zero. The aircraft is now a glider. 155 people are sitting inside an aluminum tube at 2,800 feet over one of the most densely populated cities on Earth, and the engines are not running. From the moment of the bird strike to the moment the aircraft touches the surface of the Hudson River is 208 seconds, 3 minutes and 28 seconds. In that window, Chesley Sullenberger and First Officer Jeffrey Skiles make a series of decisions that aviation investigators will spend years analyzing. Every decision is correct. Every decision is made in seconds. Every decision is made without the benefit of a simulator, without the benefit of precedent, without the benefit of time. The aircraft that Sullenberger is flying was not designed to land on water. The Airbus A320 is a land-based commercial transport. Its fuselage is not sealed for water impact. Its belly is not reinforced for ditching. The procedures for a water landing exist in the aircraft's emergency checklist, a laminated card that takes approximately 35 seconds to read in full. Sullenberger and Skiles do not have 35 seconds. They have 11. At 3:27 and 32 seconds, Sullenberger takes control of the aircraft from Skiles, who has been the handling pilot for the departure. He keys his radio and speaks to LaGuardia approach control in a voice that air traffic controllers will later describe as the calmest transmission they have ever received from an aircraft in distress. Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is Cactus 1549. Hit birds. We've lost thrust in both engines. We're turning back towards LaGuardia. The controller, Patrick Harton, clears him immediately for runway 13. Sullenberger looks at the altitude, looks at the distance, looks at the buildings between the aircraft and the runway. He runs the calculation in his head, not on paper, not on a computer, not with assistance. In his head, in seconds. He cannot make LaGuardia. Harton offers him runway 31 at LaGuardia, then Teterboro Airport in New Jersey. Sullenberger's response to Teterboro is 4 words: "We can't do it." What he does not say, what he does not have time to say, what he will spend years trying to articulate afterward, is that he has already eliminated every option except one. The Hudson River. A moving body of water, partially frozen at the edges, running through the center of a city of 8 million people, with no emergency services already in place, no rescue boats standing by, no precedent for a successful commercial aircraft ditching in the history of New York aviation. It is the only option that gives 155 people a chance. Inside the cabin, flight attendants Doreen Welsh, Sheila Dale, and Donna Dent have 90 seconds to prepare 150 passengers for a water landing. They move through the cabin with the controlled urgency of people who have trained for this moment without ever expecting it to arrive. Brace. Brace. Keep your head down. Brace. In seat 1A, a passenger named Barry Leonard watches the water of the Hudson rising toward the windshield and thinks about his daughter. In the middle of the cabin, a man named Fred Beretta is on his way to Charlotte for a business meeting. He has a presentation prepared. He has a hotel reservation. He has a return flight booked for Friday evening. In the rear of the aircraft, Doreen Welsh, the most senior flight attendant, takes her jump seat and straps in and looks at the galley wall in front of her and waits. At 3:31 p.m., the aircraft touches the surface of the Hudson River at approximately 150 knots, its nose slightly raised, its wings level, its belly absorbing the impact of water at a speed that would destroy most structures. The fuselage holds. The wings hold. The aircraft decelerates across the surface of the river and comes to rest, intact, floating. 155 people are alive. What the news cameras captured in the minutes that followed became one of the defining images of the decade. Passengers standing on the wings of a floating aircraft in the middle of the Hudson River in January, the water temperature 36 degrees Fahrenheit, the Manhattan skyline rising behind them in the gray afternoon light, ferry boats converging from both shores, Coast Guard vessels cutting through the dark water, a rescue operation assembling itself in real time, improvised and chaotic and somehow, miraculously, sufficient. Every passenger survived. 78 people were treated for injuries. Doreen Welsh, in the rear jump seat, sustained the most serious injuries of any crew member, lacerations to her leg from the impact. She was the last crew member to leave the aircraft. The word the world reached for, immediately and unanimously, was miracle. Sullenberger rejected it, quietly, consistently, and with a precision that revealed something about the man that the miracle narrative had obscured. Chesley Sullenberger was born in Denison, Texas, in 1951. He learned to fly at 16, soloing in a Cessna 172 from a grass strip outside his hometown. He flew F-4 Phantoms for the United States Air Force, serving as a fighter pilot and later as a flight leader and training officer. He joined Pacific Southwest Airlines in 1980, eventually flying for US Airways after the merger. By January 2009, he had accumulated 42 years of flying experience and 19,710 hours of flight time. He was also, for the decade preceding the accident, a safety consultant. He had spent years studying the human factors of aviation accidents, the psychology of decision-making under stress, the mechanics of crew performance in emergencies, and the gap between what training prepares pilots for and what accidents actually demand. He had read the cockpit voice recorder transcripts. He had studied the accident reports. He had thought, with professional rigor, about what it means to fail and what it means to survive. When the birds hit the engines of Flight 1549, Sullenberger was not simply a pilot with good instincts. He was a man who had spent decades preparing, in precise and deliberate ways, for a moment he never expected to face. This is what he means when he rejects the word miracle. A miracle implies randomness. It implies that the outcome was beyond human agency, beyond preparation, beyond the accumulation of knowledge and skill and experience. Sullenberger does not believe that. He believes, and has said in the careful language of a man who chooses his words with the same precision he applies to flight, that the outcome of Flight 1549 was the product of a lifetime of small decisions. Every hour of study, every simulator session, every safety report read on a weekend afternoon when he could have been doing something else. What he has never said publicly, what exists only in the spaces between his careful words, is what that lifetime cost. In the months after the accident, Sullenberger gave interviews. He wrote a book. He testified before Congress. He became, in the public imagination, a symbol of competence and grace under pressure. The steady hand, the calm voice, the man who saved 155 lives on a Thursday afternoon in January. What the interviews did not capture, what the book approached but did not fully enter, was the interior experience of those 208 seconds, not the decisions. The decisions are documented, analyzed, reconstructed in precise detail by the NTSB investigation that followed. But the experience of making them, the weight of knowing, with absolute certainty, that the outcome of the next 3 minutes would be determined entirely by the quality of your own judgment, with no margin for error, no opportunity to reconsider, no one who could help you. Sullenberger has described, in fragments across multiple interviews, a state of focused calm that he found surprising even as he was experiencing it. The absence of panic, the narrowing of attention to the immediate problem, the strange clarity that arrived in the moment when clarity was most needed. What he has not described, what he has approached and then stepped back from in the careful way of a man who understands the weight of words, is what came after. The nights, the replaying, the question that lives inside every pilot who has survived an accident that others did not. Not whether you made the right decisions, but whether you deserve to be the one who got to make them. Flight 1549 had no fatalities, but the psychological literature on survivors of mass casualty events in which one person's decisions determined who lived and who did not, is unambiguous about what follows. The weight does not lift because the outcome was good. Sometimes it is heavier because the outcome was good. The NTSB investigation into Flight 1549 produced a report of extraordinary detail. It reconstructed every second of the 208 seconds between bird strike and water contact. It analyzed every radio transmission, every control input, every system response. It concluded that the crew's performance had been exemplary, that their decisions had been correct, their execution precise, and their management of the emergency as close to optimal as the circumstances permitted. It also found something that received considerably less attention than the heroism narrative. The ditching checklist for the Airbus A320, the procedure that exists specifically for a water landing, requires a minimum of 35 seconds to complete. Sullenberger and Skiles had 11 seconds between the point at which a water landing became the only option and the point at which the aircraft contacted the surface. The checklist was not completed. Several items that might have improved the outcome of the ditching, including the closure of outflow valves that would have slowed the ingress of water into the fuselage, were not actioned. The aircraft survived anyway. The passengers survived anyway. But the investigation noted, with the careful neutrality of official language, that the outcome might have been different if the timeline had been different. If the bird strike had occurred at a slightly lower altitude, if the river had been rougher, if the ferry boats had been slower. The margin was not as wide as the miracle narrative suggested. Sullenberger knows this. He has always known this. It is perhaps the thing he knows most precisely of all, the exact width of the margin between the outcome that occurred and the outcomes that did not. The knowledge lives in the numbers. 19,710 hours of experience, deployed across 208 seconds, produced a margin that was sufficient but not comfortable. A margin that depended not just on skill and preparation, but on the specific configuration of variables on a Thursday afternoon in January. The altitude at bird strike, the temperature of the water, the proximity of the ferry terminals, the response time of the Coast Guard. He saved 155 lives. He also knows, with the precision of a man who has spent his career studying the arithmetic of survival, exactly how many things had to go right for that to be true. There is a question that nobody asked Sullenberger in the years of interviews that followed the accident. Not in the congressional testimony, not in the book tours, not in the documentary films. The question is this: what do you do with the knowledge that you were ready and that being ready was not enough to guarantee the outcome, only to make it possible? Sullenberger has built his post-accident life around aviation safety advocacy. He has testified before regulatory bodies. He has spoken at industry conferences. He has argued, consistently and with the authority of a man whose credibility is beyond question, for higher training standards, better fatigue management, and improved human factors research. He has made the argument, in the careful language of a safety professional, that the outcome of Flight 1549 should not be understood as evidence that the system works. It should be understood as evidence of how thin the margin is, and how much thinner it becomes every time the industry cuts a corner on training, on rest, on the slow, unglamorous work of preparation. This is what Sullenberger has been saying, in public, for 15 years. It is not what people hear. What people hear is the miracle, the calm voice, the steady hand, The image of passengers standing on the wings of a floating aircraft in the middle of the Hudson River, alive, in January, in the gray afternoon light. The miracle is easier to carry than the margin. Somewhere right now, an Airbus A320 is climbing out of an airport. The engines are running, their thrust pushing the aircraft up through the low cloud layer into the clear air above. The crew is running their after-takeoff checks, their voices calm and professional in the cockpit, the city falling away below them through the windshield. The cockpit voice recorder is running. The flight data recorder is running. And somewhere in the training history of the captain in the left seat, there are hours accumulated across years, across simulators, across the slow, unglamorous work of preparation that exist for a moment that may never come. Sullenberger's moment came at 2,800 feet over the Hudson River on a Thursday afternoon in January. He was ready. The margin was sufficient. 155 people went home. What he has never said publicly, what lives in the space between his careful words and the miracle the world decided to see, is the simplest and most honest version of what happened. He was ready, and he was lucky. And he knows, with the precision of 19,710 hours, that you cannot always tell which one saved you.